I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. It's funny, I'm not usually driving here at this time, meaning I'm pretty much always here. Like I don't really leave. I went to CVS once, I think, last week, but I don't really go places if at all possible. And so I was driving back just right now. And I mean, obviously, I'm not oblivious to the fact that there's traffic out there, but so I got to experience the traffic coming into, everyone was trying to come here. A lot of them didn't make it, so they ended up elsewhere. But the traffic coming to the Dharma Bum Temple is, it's a lot. And I think just because I hadn't been in it a while at this time, it just reminded me of, those of you who know me know how grateful I am for everybody here, but it was just like an immediate reminder of like, wow, you all, like, it took a lot to get here. And, so I'm really grateful to be in a place and have a place that, it's difficult to get to. Downtown, the first 10 years, we were on 2nd and Market. So if you know the gas lamps, 4th and Market, 5th and Market, we were at 2nd and Market. And there was as much parking then as there is now. And we had less parking then than we had now, because actually then we had zero parking. So we definitely had less parking. Actually, we still have zero parking, but there was no lots or anything like that. And so we used to always say downtown that, like, if you ended up there, because it was hard to find, it was downtown traffic, no one, you couldn't park anywhere. If you got there, you really wanted to be there. And we always kind of like found joy in that. Like, not that we intentionally wanted to make it impossible for people to get there, but it actually meant the people who were there really wanted to be there. And so when I was driving back just now, I was just reminded of that again, of like, wow, it's not simple to get here, during the week at 7 o'clock. So, I just appreciate you all going through whatever you went through to get here. And again, to me, it just is a representation and I think a moment to acknowledge and recognize that this practice is really important. And Ken, a dear friend of mine through the temple for 15 years, he was around in the very early days for many years. And we were doing a program years ago, and I said, it was one of our early Dharma Bum Life programs, and I said, Ken, I think you'd be great for this program. And I said, but I know you're super busy and all that. And so then he thought about it. He told me he decided to do it. And I said, you sure you have time? And he said, I'll never forget this. He said, we all have time. We just need to make time for what's important and prioritize things. And so it was just a reminder to me again at that moment that, taking care of yourself, your mental, emotional health and well-being, your spiritual practice, whatever that means to you, it's important and it should be a priority. If you're not taking care of yourself first and foremost, then you can't do anything for anybody else. I talked about this a bit on Saturday, but, you're just, no offense to anyone who's not an absolute mess, but if you're just an absolute mess, to the one or two of you in this room that might be, it's then going to be really difficult to go do anything else. So don't forget that while this journey, we talk about Bodhisattva practice and benefiting others, etc. This practice, first and foremost, really is about you taking care of you, so you can be there for other people. And in whatever ways in your life that you can make that a greater priority to take care of yourself, I highly suggest it and recommend it. Because otherwise you're just going to roam around with tons of anger and hatred and rage and frustration and disappointment and sadness and frustration. And you're just going to spend all your days pointing fingers at everybody else is screwed up and everybody else is messed up and everything else is messed up. And not looking at all at yourself. So that's the fun part of this practice. Is, everybody spent all day long talking about what a mess everybody else is. And now here's your chance to look at what a mess you are. Y'all still want to stay? So, all right, we'll start with a meditation practice. For those who are joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. Thank you for making it all the way to your couch. I know that was really difficult. But I do appreciate you making the journey to join us tonight. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? You're just going to sit, you're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture. Just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, it often helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, just trying to sit up straight. Again, relaxing the shoulders. Hands are on the knees or lap. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means you need to move. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments of your practice. Just sitting. Breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, resting, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important, the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around you, or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind, and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what you get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is filled with conflict, chaos, difficulty, challenges. This is life. It's learning to be with life as it arises and keeping yourself steady, calm, peaceful, so you can deal with life as it arises. Most people don't know how to deal with life calmly or peacefully or with any sort of balance whatsoever. Triggered so quickly, pushed so quickly. The smallest things piss you off. So then when large things happen, you're just destroyed. But it's the little things. That's where you practice. Not being annoyed by the traffic, but finding appreciation and gratitude for it because everybody's going where they need to go. Not being annoyed by the food that you get that isn't cooked properly because you're just finding gratitude and the ability to be able to eat. Not being annoyed at your coffee not prepared properly and just being grateful that you can have coffee. Not being annoyed by anything, but being grateful and appreciative for life because you have it. And you could spend it angry and pissed off and miserable every single day if you'd like. Go right ahead. The only one who's suffering from that is you. Nobody else suffers from your misery. Remember that. Nobody else suffers from your misery. The only one who suffers from your misery is you. And that's not completely true because then you take your misery out on others. So they might not suffer directly from your misery, but indirectly they have to put up with you. Which I'm sure, you're a treat, so not too worried about that with this crowd. I often joke and say there's somebody else sitting in some meditation class somewhere or some therapy session somewhere because of you. So while you all come here thinking you're getting calm and quiet and peaceful and everybody should be so happy that you're here, somebody in some other, parallel universe is sitting there. And all their questions, all their complaining, all their stories, all their misery, all their, whatever, finger pointing is you. So sit with that for a little while and remember. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in each moment. Because that's what we have control over. And if we can bring kind thoughts, kind speech, kind action into our lives, we will suffer less. And with that place, you can create the change that you want to create. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, to those who are joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. Feel free to put any questions there, and I'll do my best to respond. So we'll open up to questions. And actually, I made a joke earlier about walking to your couch, and I see Denise and Dan, you're here. You all drive in most weeks from El Centro, so those of us stuck in traffic here, we got nothing. So questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. To be fair, they don't come in just for this, but Yeah.
First off, thank you for having the Heart Sutra music on your website, because I cue it up sitting down to meditate. The atmosphere.
Beautiful.
It is, I love it. So speaking of atmosphere, rituals, etc., can you explain what your ritual is when you come in to this class? What is that process for you? What do you do?
Sure. I have some questions for you, but on that part, just so I can clarify. But let me go back to your first question about comment about the Heart Sutra. So the old, and it's been many years since they changed it, but the first website that was built for quite a while with the Heart Sutra, it used to actually play automatically. And I think that stopped now. You actually have to click on it, right? Yeah. It used to come up just as soon as you opened up the website, boom, it would go on. And I can't even tell you how many people have made that exact same comment, that some people would go to the website literally just to hear that. And now you do have to kind of, find it and hit play. But isn't that just beautiful? Like, it's just, that thing, like, I'll be dead and I'll still hear that, hopefully. Funny story, speaking of ritual, I'll probably come back to your question. But again, the downtown temple, we had for 10 years we were there, and we had a windows right on 2nd and little windows up top. And I had these little square, about the size of an iPhone, square chant boxes. And you really only hear them for the most part, I'd say in Taiwan, but Buddhist temples, you'll hear them, and they have different chants that they would play. And this one had a similar sound to that, but it would recite Namo Guanxin Pusa, which is pay homage to Kuan Yin Bodhisattva in Mandarin, right? And it would just repeat over and over and over, and it was beautiful. And so as you approached the temple, and if you looked into it, if you've never seen it, if you would have looked in the window, and there was that black Buddha that's by the front door there, if you would have looked in, you would have just thought it was somebody's like condo or something like that, But we camped out there for 10 years, never had a sign or anything. There was a Buddha in the window in the chant box. So, and as you approached, it would get louder and you would hear it. And then as you walked maybe one or two, probably equivalent to like one door over, you would stop hearing it. So one day I got to temple, came out in the morning, there was a sign there. And somebody wrote, I've listened to this enough. You can turn it off now. Thank you. And depending upon how you translate that, I translate it as they got it. Like, they've heard it enough. They got Kuan Yin Bodhisattva and they're done. Now, there's a possibility that they just didn't want to hear it anymore, but I'm still going to go with option A. So my ritual. Do you mean like as is my question for you, do you mean literally what I do when I come up here right now? Yeah. So for me, the first thing I do is I do this very formal, when I come up, I do a half bow to the shrine. And I was trained in very traditional Taiwanese Buddhism. And all Buddhism has tons of rituals. For most people, if this is your first exposure to the Dharma Bum Temple, which is why we created it, because most Western people end up here, you go to any Buddhist temple around here, there's probably 30 of them within a 15-mile radius. Taiwanese temple, Vietnamese Buddhist temple, Japanese Buddhist temple, Thailand, Lao, Cambodian temple. You'll see so much ritual. You'll feel like you're at Catholic Church. So it's really important to understand, or any other religion, it's really important to understand that ritual has been in Buddhism for 2,500 years. The bowing, the chanting, the robes, all of those things. Now, that's also the thing that most Western people are not into. They'll go once or twice, they'll think it's cool, and then they won't go back. Because they're not there to learn how to bow, to learn how to chant, to know how to open your hands when you do a prostration. Most people don't want that. My guess is about 1 in 100 people who show up here are really into that. And they'll go to those temples, and they should stay there because they're beautiful. And you can bow and chant and do all that stuff. It's actually what I prefer, right? But when we started this 18 years ago, we literally started it because what I called a revolving door, a revolving door after 3-4 years, probably about 4 years with that temple. It wasn't what most people wanted. But my time in the monastery, 11 months in Taiwan, very strict, very disciplined in the Buddhist college. So what I do is kind of and I do it in different ways all day throughout this temple and especially here. I have kind of, for me, I hate to call it watered down, but in a way watered down ritual because, I don't do everything that I would do. And I also do more stuff probably when you're all not here. But when I approach, I was taught anytime you would pass the Buddha, like if you were going from that side of the room to that side of the room, you would pause and do a half bow. At the monastery, there are little shrines and temples everywhere. So it takes a long time to walk. Because every time you see a Buddha statue or shrine, you would stop and you would do a half bow. So when I come up, the first thing I do is I do a half bow. And then I come up and I then become one with the iPad. And I do my about 12-second ritual sitting here. And some may think I'm in some deep contemplation, but I'm literally just hitting go live on the streaming device. And I know, sorry. You thought I was like connecting with the, no. I'm just giving it, because it's on like a 10 to 15 second delay. So I'm just hitting go live and I'm waiting for that to happen. And then I come up here and I do a half bow again. And then I grab the striker for the bowl. And I do a half bow when I do that. And then I lead us in the triple gem, which I can come back to that. I've talked about that a lot recently, but I can come back to that. We all recite, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, right? And then I hit the bell 3 times for that. And then I turn to, this is the medicine Buddha. I didn't used to do this, but when pandemic hit, I started doing it every day with all my offerings and everything. I then bow to prostration, half bow, what I would call, to the medicine Buddha. And then I sit down. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It's all personal to you, not scripted from the original.
Nothing is scripted from the original. Everybody's made shit up for 2,500 years. I mean that very seriously. I mean, you could go to a very traditional Asian Buddhist temple, and you may think that, this is kind of this, kind of ethnic bias that we have. We might think that if we're in a Vietnamese Buddhist temple, that's like the thing, or if we're in a, Japanese, everybody's doing it differently, and they have all changed it. And when I say made it up, meaning that whoever started that lineage started it a certain way. And then it just gets followed. There's a beautiful Taiwanese temple up in Irvine. And when the master passed away, and there were about 6, 7, 8 nuns that operate the entire temple. It's a big place. I see a lot of people in there. And when the master passed away, you know what changed? Nothing. Everybody just knew what to do. You just do the same thing. So, all the places. I mean, I recommend, go pick 5 different cultural Buddhist temples. Go to them. Go to all of them. I mean, for me, it's really important to go see these things, because Western people come here and they're like, oh, fix me. Here are my problems. I don't like what's going on. Talk to me about this Buddhist stuff, because it'll bring me peace. You know what you do there? You shut up, you bow, you chant. I love that. But here, most people don't want that. Here, people want their problems fixed. So it's a very different practice. Welcome to, Buddhism in America. But to me, there was nothing more beautiful than bowing, chanting in another language. You don't even know what's being said. They bow, you bow. They stand, you stand. They eat, you eat. You eat what's in front of you. You follow. You wake up 15 minutes later, you brush your teeth, splash water on your face, you put your robe on, and you're in a line. How long does it take you to get ready in the morning? You know what I mean? Most people spend 15 minutes just scrolling through their phone before they even get out of bed. And 15 minutes is like, I really need an hour. So it's just different life. And so the rituals are really, to me, they're very important. And I have many of them that I do here all day long. What else?
When you ring the bell, is it clearing the energy of the room?
No.
Or is it just center you?
No. I don't know what energy you're talking about. There's just, there's a bunch of people in here that are a mess. You want this energy? And do you think the strike of one bell 3 times is going to clear this energy? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not in, please don't take offense by this, because it's your first time here? Yeah. I'm not a new age energy person. That has energy. I don't know. That's not my thing. Buddhism is not that at all. There's no cleansing going on.
What's the ritual significance of it?
So coming back to say that again, what was the ritual significance of it? So the 3 strikes of the bell is for what we call in Buddhism the triple gem. So when we take refuge, the first thing we're doing is I take refuge in. First of all, refuge. What does refuge mean to you? Just shout out refuge. When you hear the word refuge, what's it mean?
Solace.
Say again, solace. What else?
Safety.
Shelter, safety, protection. Right? So whatever refuge is to you. And then you look at the 3 things. In Buddhism, we call them the 3 jewels. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. First one is the Buddha. So when you hear that, you might think that we're taking refuge or praising this guy, the Buddha. He died 2,500 years ago, and he cannot help you at all. So if you're waiting for him to fix you, save you, heal you, come in, clear your energy, you're going to be waiting a long time, my friend, right? So what we're taking refuge in when we say I take refuge in the Buddha is what's called bodhicitta, which is Buddha nature. What that means is the Buddha, as a human, he woke up, he ate, he slept, lived life no different than we do, really. And he could figure out how to end his suffering. So we take refuge in this idea that if this other dude figured out how to end his suffering, then wonderful, we can end our suffering. Do you know who's responsible for ending your suffering? Who? Us, 100%. I find that to be the most liberating thing in the world. Because if I was waiting for somebody else to end my suffering, that would suck. Because then I would spend my entire life waiting for something, someone, someplace else to bring me peace.
That's such a Christian-based focus, too.
Yeah, and I'm Jewish, so it doesn't work for me either. So we're taking refuge in that we as humans can end our suffering, right? And we bodhicitta, that Buddha nature that we all have. The second is the Dharma. So we take refuge in the Dharma, which is the teachings, all the things you'll learn in Buddhism: loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. All these kind of basic Buddhist teachings that you'll come across, that's the Dharma. Those are the teachings. So we find safety and comfort that if we put this stuff into our life, we will suffer less. And the third one is the Sangha. That's a community. The time of the Buddha, that was the Buddha and the monks, and then that expanded from there to the nuns, and then lay people. Kind of modern day Sangha, the word Sangha really translates loosely to community, is the idea of just people coming together to practice, meditate, stuff like that. So when you hit the bell 3 times, again, in that situation, we're doing, I take refuge in the Buddha, you hit it once. I take refuge in the Dharma, you hit it once. I take refuge in the Sangha, you would hit it once. So it's a 3 bells for the triple gem. Yeah. What else?
I guess I've read a few places about the bones of the Buddha, and I think one of the things about it was not to look at them.
When you say the bones, are you talking about like relics, or what do you mean?
I think it's in a sutra, if anything.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I'm not sure. I mean, the Buddha. Yeah,
it's contextual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What else? Questions? Mm-hmm.
I work with a lot of people that have an internal fight with God sometimes, and they come in, they're really strong in their addiction.
Mm.
And how would Buddha, or how would the Buddha interpret that? Is it like they're on a spiritual journey and they're trying to get rid of ego and their greed and their addiction and stuff like that? How would he put that into a conversation that they could stop that fight?
Can you describe again, briefly in your words, that fight, what that fight is? The first part of what you said was they come in connecting with God or something about God. What did you mean by that?
They're mad at God. They have this constant fight with, like, I don't believe in God. There is no
the
God.
fight with God.
And I'm like, well,
Gotcha.
I think you're just mad at God, and you're mad at your ego, and your
Yeah.
ego separating you.
Yeah, or they're just mad.
Yeah.
So, a couple things, just to point out for context, and you may have heard this before, but the Buddha was asked 12 or 14 questions that he wouldn't answer. One of them was, should we believe in God? Gods and goddesses, specifically, because this is India, this is 500 years before Christ, right? The concept today of God and Christ, that stuff didn't exist back then because this was 500 years before that. But they had endless gods and goddesses. And so when they asked the Buddha, should we believe in gods and goddesses, he said, if you do, you do, you don't, you don't. That's up to you. I'm just a human. I can't tell you what to believe in. What I can tell you is how to live a peaceful, kind, compassionate, gentle life. And that's what he taught. So anytime questions come up around that God stuff, to me, I would bring it back to the 2 things you said are anger and God. So I would remove the God part from it and say, look, like in reality, to your question was, someone's coming to you with that problem, how do you deal with it? I would just focus on the anger. Look, where's the anger? Why are you angry? Where's this anger coming from? And the way the Buddha taught the second noble truth, which the first one is that life is filled with dukkha, suffering. The second one is the cause of suffering. And that is greed, anger, and ignorance. So all suffering, according to Buddhist teachings, comes from greed, anger, ignorance. And we practice generosity to overcome greed. We practice compassion to overcome anger. I'll come back to that. And we practice wisdom to overcome ignorance. So again, coming back to anger, in that moment, what we use to overcome anger is compassion. So I would suggest for me, as a practice, anger is what drove me to Buddhism. Like I could only be angry for so many years before I realized I was either going to, jump or do something else. And so to overcome anger, it wasn't about trying to defeat my anger. It was about practicing compassion, having nothing to do with what the anger was about. So instead of good luck trying, and that's the nature of your question, good luck trying to solve somebody's anger with God, But what you could do is offer them ideas and suggestions of, look, and you don't have to tie it to Buddhism. It's nothing to do with Buddhism. Just say, hey, so-and-so, how are you practicing compassion in your life? And create conversation, dialogue, opportunities for these individuals to practice compassion. As soon as you say to somebody who's battling anger with God that, hey, the Buddha said you should practice compassion, and then you'll get over your anger, never going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about religion. It's not about any of that stuff. It's just saying, what ways in your life can you cultivate compassion? Can you cultivate loving kindness? Because all we have to do is ask ourselves, when we are in a place of practicing compassion and loving kindness, is anger there? No, we're focused on the love and compassion. So if we do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there is no place for anger to arise. And in that process, the ego begins to diminish anyways. But yeah, trying to solve that, I mean, good luck. Focus on compassion. What else? Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for practicing self-compassion?
Self-compassion. So the question was, any recommendation for practicing self-compassion? Yes. First is to begin to recognize if one lacks self-compassion, what's there? So if you lack self-compassion, what is in that place that is not being filled with self-compassion?
Judgment and hatred.
Judgment and hatred. Okay? Now, are you human?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you going to judge yourself and others your whole life? Probably. Are you going to hate yourself and others or some degree of that most of your life?
I guess more or less that's up to me.
Yeah, well, I'm getting there. You're one step ahead of me. I know it's hard. There was a woman here the other day. It was real. She couldn't admit that she'd ever yelled at somebody in her life, because she said, I don't see myself that way. Well, the way you see yourself and the way you are two different things. So the question is it likely that you may hate yourself or others for the rest of your life?
Yes.
Yes. And you would like to not do that, right?
Yes.
Yes. So when we look at, as a practice, this idea of self-hatred, self-anger, these types of things, we're just human. Why? Don't answer this, but ponder this. My master always said, practice expecting nothing from anyone ever. And you know where that has to start? With ourselves. Why would one expect them all of a sudden to just drop judgment of themselves? Why would one expect themselves to be these great, incredible, flawless human beings? When you drop the expectation of yourself that you've set so ridiculously, impossibly high, that you've been trying to achieve your whole life, you'll no longer feel like a failure. And then you'll no longer have the judgment. And then you'll no longer have the hatred. And when that goes away, you're left with the compassion that's there. It's already there. The metaphor I love, again, I just shared this Saturday, but coming back to the bodhicitta, the Buddha nature question, the example there is that, so what's your name in the back?
Dylan.
Dylan. So Dylan, on a cloudy day, is the sun still there?
Yes.
Yes. Can you see it?
No.
No. Why not?
Because it's being obstructed.
Obstructed by the clouds. So the practice is that sun is our Buddha nature. The Buddha said we're all already enlightened beings. We just got a lot of clouds. And so the practice, the cool thing about clouds and why I love this example is that clouds are moving. They're always moving. Right? So these clouds are our greed, our anger, our ignorance, our cravings, our desires, our attachments, all these things that we cling to. The stories in our head about ourselves that aren't even true. You've been telling yourself stories about yourself your whole life. Stop. Easier said than done, of course. But the idea is to recognize your greed and practice, go make a sandwich for somebody. You know, the practice of the recognition of anger. Go give compassion and love to somebody. I understand you're talking about self-compassion, but what I'm saying is in the process of cultivating self-compassion, go practice generosity towards somebody else. Go practice compassion towards somebody else. And those two things are very wise. And in the practice of those things towards others, have you helped someone once in your life, Dylan? Yeah. And when you help someone, how do you feel?
Amazing.
Amazing. So in the moment of helping someone, while you're helping someone and feeling wonderful, would you even ponder needing self-compassion? No. Self-compassion isn't a question because there's no self-hatred there. There's no self-anger there because you're helping others. The Bodhisattva practice, literally, Kuan Yin, the large statue in the middle here, her name means hearer of the world's cry. She is the endless body of compassion. It is the two wings of Buddhism are wisdom and compassion. This practice has always been about pouring out compassion towards others. For some reason, we're harder on ourselves than everybody else, and, I don't have enough time to get into that. But pour out compassion to others, and you'll feel better. And you'll just wake up to the self-compassion that's there. So, but the thing about this practice is you have to do things. The challenge, I don't want to say the problem because we've got to start somewhere, but the challenge is most people get into meditation or Buddhism, they read a couple books, they show up to this stuff once or twice a week, and they're like, how come my life isn't better yet? Because you're walking out the store and you're going back to the same patterns, same behaviors, same actions you were doing an hour ago. And then in 20 minutes from now, you're going to be just as pissed off as you were an hour and a half ago. And then you got to wait till the next time you chew up to something like this. There's a big gap, big chunk of time that exists between your meditation sessions. You got to do stuff then. So, what else? We'll do one more before we close. Yeah.
Who's that skeletal statue?
Skeletal statue, the freaky looking dude right there?
Yeah, who's that?
Always one of my favorite stories, but that is the Buddha. Surprised?
No.
No. So often people think that the big belly guy is the Buddha. This is kind of like finding out Santa Claus isn't real or Easter Bunny. There's no kids here today, are there? Right. The big belly guy is not the Buddha. His name was Hotai. He was a monk who lived in China about 1,000 years ago. He had a big belly. He had a bag full of gifts always and passed them out. He was very happy, very jolly, very prosperous. Sound familiar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Somehow we get Santa Claus, right?
Yeah.
So his name, Hotai, literally means bag carrier. That's the big belly guy. He became known as the happy Buddha, the belly for good luck, welcome to America. They put him in casinos. Everybody throws money at him. So people win. You rub the belly, good luck, you're good to go. This guy right here is Siddhartha Gautama. And I'll close with a story. That is what's called the emaciated Buddha. This was him. He was, for those who don't know, he was raised in India, again, 500 years before Christ. Was a prince, Had all the wealth, all the riches, all the women, anything you can imagine as a prince in India 2,500 years ago. And at 29 years old, he snuck out. And in the middle of the night, I'm going to shorten the story, but it happened over 4 trips. But in the middle of the night, he saw 4 things when he snuck out: old age, sickness, death, and an ascetic, kind of like a monk or nun. Peaceful, simple person. A lot of yogis back then at this time. And so he went back to his attendant and he said, "Chana, what's this old age, sickness, and death? Does this happen to all of us?" And Chana said, "Yes, my lord, we all get old. We all age. We don't even get old. We all age. We all get sick, and we all will die." And his father had sheltered him from this his whole life because he didn't want him to leave. They wanted him to become a king, and they knew he had a compassionate heart. And he knew that if he knew all these things, he wouldn't stay and rule the land. So he ends up sneaking out in the middle of the night, and he roams the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years. During this time, traveling with 5 buddies, he, as a yogi, one of the practices was thinking that, and really kind of Vedic Hindu practices, that if they overcame attachment to physical form, that was the way to enlightenment. So they would starve themselves to near death. It said they ate 1 grain of rice a day, and that you could take your fingers and touch front to back, and that's how skinny they were. So he comes to a riverbed, and someone had offered him a bowl of kanji, and they were like, no, we don't eat. And he said something to the effect of, "Well, I'm hungry." So he took the bowl, and he said, if the bowl goes against the stream, he put it in the river. He said, if it goes against the stream, I'm going to eat. Bowl goes against the stream, he starts to eat, and those 5 guys, they left him. They're like, "You food eater, you sell out." They left. He continues his journey. He sits under a Bodhi tree in Bodhi, India, for 21 days. He says, "I'm not leaving until I figure out why we suffer." And at that moment, he understood the 4 Noble Truths, which is what I talked about earlier: the suffering, the cause of suffering, the ending of suffering is the 3rd one, and then the 4th is the path. Eightfold Path: views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. In essence, what we bring into the world. So then these 5 guys saw him. The tapestry above the exit sign up there, that's actually the image of what they call the first turning of the Dharma wheel at Deer Park. And that's where he taught the 4 Noble Truths to those 5 guys. They saw him sitting there and they said, "There's Siddhartha." That was his name. "Looks like he's figured something out. Let's go sit with him." So they sat down. He taught them the 4 Noble Truths. And they said, "We will call you the Buddha. You have awakened. You have understood the cause of all suffering. You are the awakened one." And then he taught for 45 years, and he died. We picked this statue when we started, 18 years ago, because when we went into Buddha for You, before we had Buddha for You, to kind of open up the temple space, we picked 3 things: that statue, that tapestry, and the 1,000-armed Kuan Yin on the back corner there. And because it was us. We were, young, foolish, very emotionally, mentally, spiritually near death, physically unhealthy. But we thought Buddhism was really cool. And so we wanted to sit not with this like enlightened Buddha that we were trying to become, kind of going back to the expectations. We weren't trying to become that Buddha. We needed to see how we were this guy. We were the ones physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually near death. So we sat with him, and we sit with him still to this day as a reminder that if this dude could figure out how to end suffering, so can we. So that's the emaciated Buddha. All right, so I'm going to close on that. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. All right, before y'all head out, our Dharma Bum host Eddie has a few announcements for us.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Eddie.
Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Eddie. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you for being here. We wish you well.